Well, the story of the week in federal politics has been the debacle surrounding the broken promise of the Education Minister, Christopher Pyne. Christopher Pyne was a very, very effective attack dog in opposition. His early days as Education Minister weren't all that promising because the best he could do was coming up with a fun slogan in Parliament, labelling Bill Shorten electricity bill. Ha ha ha, he would say, but he is the Education Minister and should be setting an example. But now to break the promise on the funding reforms that had been agreed with the New South Wales government, to anger the New South Wales Premier and Education Minister, a Liberal Premier and Education Minister, in the way that he has, is a political disaster for the Abbott government. But please, if you're someone who supports the Labor side of politics or the coalition side of politics, don't see this in terms of the political battle, that we've got a problem for Tony Abbott. He's got an Education Minister who probably shouldn't be in the job, who's broken a promise and has enraged most of the parents, for instance, of school children in New South Wales. Don't look at it that way. What's happened is there was a reform of the funding of education which put forward a much fairer system, which was, there was a bipartisan approach across all sides of politics. This was a better way to fund schooling. The previous system was broke, and it's not a political issue. This was being said by the New South Wales government, the Liberal government, people like Catherine Greiner, who are part of the Gonski group that put forward the reforms. Christopher Pyne, because it wasn't his idea, I don't know what it is, he's decided he's going to go back on this at a political cost. But forget the political cost, because what these reforms are about is allocating an amount of funding for each school student, public or private, across New South Wales. And then the kids that are identified as having difficulties, disabilities, learning difficulties, whatever, they get extra assistance. And that assistance then can be carried from public schools across to private schools. It's something that they carry with them, and it provides them with that extra assistance, and it's going to be rolled out over the next few years to provide these kids assistance. Now, by going back on this promise, it is going to enrage people, and it'll be looked at in terms of a political error by Christopher Pyne. But forget that. What this dope has done is that there are young kids who might need speech therapy, occupational therapy, kids who've got disabilities who need this assistance, and who this funding will provide that assistance for. But because this clown, because it's not his idea, wants to withdraw the funding and go back to the drawing board, these kids aren't going to get that. Now, Christopher Pyne should not be the Education Minister. He's obviously not up to the job, but he's got the job. He's creating a real political problem for Tony Abbott, but forget that. It's these kids that the Education Minister, Adrian Piccoli, and the Premier, Barry O'Farrell, are standing up for. Can we please have some common sense on this? Tony Abbott should bring Barry O'Farrell. Maybe, there's nothing wrong with admitting a mistake. Put someone else into the Education Minister's job and get this thing done properly, because what's happening now is a disgrace, and there are young kids whose entire lives are going to be affected by this. So some sensible negotiation, please. Tony Abbott could intervene, talk to Barry O'Farrell, and send Christopher Pyne off to do something that is more fitting his abilities.